So let's get into making this pinch pot. First thing you're going to do is you're going to want to tear off a piece of this clay, just a piece that fits nicely in your hands. You'll notice there's more clay in your package than you probably need. That's so that you can make more than one if you want to, or someone else in your family or in your household can also make one. So the first thing that I'm up to is just forming this clay into a ball. We start out with it as a ball because it'll be easy to handle and it will be easier to sort of control the shape that you're going with. And when making a pinch pot, I find that the most important thing for the shape is to try to get it as tall as you want it before you try to get the width of it. So what I'm going to do is just put my finger into it, and then I'm going to start shaping that clay up my finger. So I'm just kind of squeezing it and pushing it to go up. So I'm just kind of getting this really thin little cup shape. And then when it's as tall as I want it to be, in this case just like the height of my finger, because that's as high as I'll be able to get into the clay with my fingers, is how high I'm going to go with this. Okay. So I like to try to keep it as kind of evened out as possible. So just when you're finished that, give it like a nice little press on all of its surfaces to kind of try to even out the clay as much as you can. You just want all of those walls to be the same thickness. Yeah, so now what I'm going to do is try to start to make it wider, and because it's a little bit deeper, I'm just going to start with my two fingers pushing against my palm and just rotating the piece of clay as I'm going, and that's going to start to make it wider and wider. And I'm always just going to stay aware of making this as even as possible so that it doesn't get too thin in some places or too thick in others, because you want it to be nice and strong as possible. And you can make whatever shape you want. You can make something lower than this, you can make a little tray, you could make something a lot rounder. I'm going with something a little bit more cup shaped or like sort of flower pot shaped right now. And when I get the height and start to get the width to the point where I can get my fingers in, I'm just going to start pinching it while rotating it, and this will pretty quickly start making it wider and expanding that vessel. And you can kind of see here that I got a little tear at the top. That's okay, just rub your fingers over it. When you're working with it, if the clay starts to dry out a little bit, you can use like a little bit of water, just a little tiny bit. When you add too much water, it starts to get very slippery and a bit soupy, and when that happens, you kind of need to start over with a new piece because you'll lose control and it will get a little bit too wet to work with and fall over. So you just want to be careful of that and just keep always moving it around your hands and using your fingertips to like erase any of these little cracks that start showing up. The cracks are just from the clay expanding. It's not at this moment because it's too dry. When it's too dry, it will start to feel crumbly and hard, and then you will be able to feel like the problems that you're having. So I'm just keeping going. You can make it the walls as thin or as thick as you want to. You might want to keep them at like a 1/2 inch thick. You might want to make them a little bit thinner. Whatever kind of vessel you're feeling like making is what you want to try, or how thick you want to go. And if you go a little bit too far and it falls over, that's not a really big deal. Just squish it up and start over with a different piece of clay and let that or add a little bit more water to this clay so that it comes back to being kind of as wet as it was when you started. And now I've kind of got like the shape that I want. So it's round on the bottom right now, so I'm just going to place it here on this tray so that it gets a flat bottom, and just push my fingers into the bottom of that to create a little nice base for it to sit on. I'm trying to also even out that bottom as well because it was previously a little bit too deep for my fingers to get to, so I'm just patting it down to make it kind of flat and even. We want all of our clay to be as even as possible so that it dries evenly and doesn't crack. And I'm just going to even out this rim